look for opportunities, look for blue ocean. Right now, with AI on the rise over the past year and a half, AI is producing tons of paid ads, tons of cold outreach, cold emails, cold calls, robocalls, and all that. So it's a pretty dense, pretty impersonal channel. Also, people are now fed up with both assistants and bots and tools and AI just reaching out impersonally to them. So looking for all opportunities to have personal and direct and individual conversation is best, meaning that events are on the rise. B2B business influencers are also on the rise because businesses already trust them. Communities are on the rise, Slack groups, masterminds, coaching groups, and all that stuff. So any opportunity to go to a smaller space and present yourself as an actual human being beats all the bot outreach, which has been overwhelming over the past few years.
Welcome back to SEOleverage.com. Gerd Mellach here. This is episode 133. I know all the listeners of this show have one thing in common. Everybody has an entrepreneurial spirit, at least, already has a business or is about to start a business. Everybody has in mind that they're going to grow their business in one way or another one. And I can't think of anybody better suited to give advice on this topic than Mario Peschev, who is my guest today. Welcome, Mario.
Hey, Gerd. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. I had a pleasure to get to know you in a mastermind where we are both talking about our businesses and see how you grow. And it's really, I think the first question I have to ask someone like you with such a broad experience, but then also very, very deep, which is, I think, something that characterizes you specifically, that you know a lot about a lot of different things, not just on the surface, but have really firsthand deep experience. How do you sleep at night?
Not a lot. I would say I'm always curious. I refer to myself as a learnaholic. So my hobby is actually learning more and more and more. So I've been obsessed about learning and about, diving deep into everything that I do. My background is in software engineering. So, back in the early day, I had an old computer with a Windows 3.11 that was pre-95. So it was 1999 or so. And resources were scarce. Computer help was scarce. We didn't have forums and all that jazz. So it was pretty tough to actually get anything solved. So it was a lot of learning and debugging and trial and error and breaking and then having to fix it yourself. So this is a type of experience that the new generations don't have because everything's at the tip of their fingers. They have TikTok, they have Google, they have ChatGPT, they have Gemini, they have pretty much everything else. So it's really easy to find information and data and YouTube videos and Udemy tutorials and courses and whatnot. And back in the day, we had to spend weeks solving a single problem. So you were reading hundreds of pages of manuals and user guides and help and all that stuff until you learn something. And, when I got to this level, I started diving even deeper. Okay, what this computer architecture looks like, motherboards, resistors and every single bits and pieces. At some point I had to stop because otherwise I would have been started to produce my own microchips and CPUs and GPUs. And that would have taken another decade of my life. So I said, okay, there's a certain level I should probably stop diving that deep in.
I had a friend called Stefanos Antipas, and he's in like a social media consultant, and he taught me something which I found really interesting because I'm always very curious, always trying to figure stuff out, etc. What he told me in a course I did with him was to kind of have creativity work within boundaries. So what he just said, look, you need to be creative, but set yourself boundaries so you can be creative in this particular area and not go beyond, to make sure the creativity is still productive. And I'm thinking a lot about this. I'm going to reach out to him afterwards because I think it's it's really very often we have this ADHD attitude, or whatever you want to call it. Everybody's ADHD these days, who's got about a lot of ideas. I think it's just this ongoing curiosity where you just really at some point need to say, okay, this is the boundary until here we can go, and that's it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a fine balance between three things. It's art, craft, and science. Regardless of what sort of specialty you're in, especially in any sort of digital specialty, entrepreneurship, business ownership, management, marketing, whatever it is, I believe that we have these three core pillars: art, craft, and science. Why? For every single specialty, you have the science. So you need to learn the basics, the foundations, the first principles. So this is the science part of the equation. Then you have the craft, which is it is a job and you need to hone your skills. You actually have to face the problems. You have to learn the lessons by facing obstacles and overcoming these obstacles. And then you have the art, because otherwise you would be a robot, right? Cubicle employees, they do all the same things, following the same playbooks. And without the art, it would be pretty much inhumane. You know, robots can do the non-arty work. And what differentiates us from all the chatbots that are just regurgitating information is the creative piece, which is exactly the part of creativity that you mentioned here.
I think it's actually a really interesting framework. Do you use this when you analyze a business? Their science, their craft, their art basis. I think it's a really good lens to look through a business at a business.
It is part of the unique selling proposition. It's part of the org chart. It's part of the accountability chart. And I haven't been able to plow everything within my new book, right? It's you can just create a 5,000 page guide, or otherwise nobody else is going to read it. But I'm actually talking about that in my blog as additional resources and as part of my auditing framework, particularly for accountability charts and hiring and recruitment. So it's kind of part of the process, yes.
Sounds like the perfect segue to talk about your recent accomplishment. Congratulations on authoring this book. Really went through it and was actually really blown away. I reached out to you and actually asked you to publish the paperback version already because I want to have it on my desk. So it's called the MBA Disrupted, your step-by-step guide to bootstrapping a $1 million plus business, a digital business. Whoever can get their hands on it, please do yourself a favor and get it. I really enjoyed the book for a couple of reasons. So first, obviously, I enjoy reading a book from somebody I at least know somehow and know a little bit of the backstory and what you're involved in. But really, the second reason is because you touch on pretty much everything I have been going through in 20 years of entrepreneurship, from freelancing to where we are right now and definitely beyond. So there's a lot of material in. And it's one of those books. I have a few books I like to read once a year, just as a reminder. And this is definitely going to become one of them. And it's going to become one of them because I know that in whatever situation a company is, when you pick up this book and you just turn the pages, you're going to get stuck on a paragraph and just reread about client acquisition, or you reread about the exit strategy, or you reread about, I don't know, remote team culture or whatever. So really congrats on covering so much in just a few pages. Really nice accomplishment.
This is so kind of you. First and foremost, I want to say thank you. And it's on I so many times, but I just didn't want to stop you in the midst of that. So again, I'm really pleased with the feedback. I'm very, very honored. And spending years working on that type of feedback is justifying everything that I've done over the past few years.
Really. I want to ask you a little bit about the title, the MBA. Why does it have to be disrupted?
So multiple thoughts. So I'm probably going to start with a backstory. I spent some time, well, I've actually calculated it's over 10,000 hours teaching. And I actually spent several years as an almost full-time teacher. Back in 2006, I started a software engineering job in a training bootcamp academy. And this was the only bootcamp academy in town, actually in Bulgaria, in the entire country. So it was the first pilot of actually creating an alternative version of education. In that case, it was for software engineering. I was teaching Java classes, C# and stuff in 2006. And I was pretty bullish on that, right? I was young. I was given the opportunity. I had some skills, but I was definitely not there. I went through some tests. I got picked. I went through kind of additional presentation testing and skills and pitching in boot camps. And eventually I got the assistant role. And in 2 weeks, I got the lead trainer role. So I definitely felt the imposter syndrome type of stuff, right? I said, I don't have a computer science education yet. I don't have the skills to present and whatnot. But at the same time, I was lined up and compared against hundreds of other people applying for the same job. And many of them had computer science engineering degrees, informatics and stuff. And according to the committee, they weren't performing as well, right? They weren't able to regurgitate the right information, or they were too in-depth and too scientifically, thinking of future PhD type of people. So not translating the information accurately. And it was just not the right mix of passion, aptitude, skills, learning creativity, and being able to present that in a relatable manner with stories, with analogies, with associations and stuff. So I spent many years doing that, primarily in software engineering capacity. Then I moved to business and marketing and entrepreneurship and freelancing and some other topics, but it was mostly in kind of keynote speaker or just 40-minute presentation, just a more condensed variant. So again, having spent over 15 years back and forth in teaching, I have realized myself that I've done interesting things in the entrepreneurship space. I've created 3 7-figure companies myself from scratch. I have several other companies, some in the 5 and 6 figures, in different stages of that career. I've sold companies, I've bought companies, and I've worked with VCs. I'm an angel investor in nearly 20 companies right now. So I've done my fair share of work in the digital space and launching businesses, hiring, and all that stuff. But I don't have a college degree. So just like other entrepreneurs who dropped out of college at some point of time because they focused on their careers, I fall in the same line. And of course, I don't neglect or I don't diminish education itself, but I definitely believe that we live in times where traditional education is somewhat backwards and it isn't catching up enough or fast enough to compensate for what's happening behind the scenes. With your SEO practice, right? Things are changing so fast. Google is releasing core algorithms, the March 5th algorithm, the May 5th algorithm, prior to that in September and October, helpful content update, the other core update in October. Things are changing every couple of months, major changes. The Google I/O talk, which had the AI overviews launched as part of the search generative experience. So many different things happening in only one segment, only one channel. And we're not even talking about all the social media channels or email marketing or demand generation or PPC as a whole concept and companies and all of that. So if you think about traditional MBA, Master of Business Administration, you have to go through the 12 years of school or so, depending on where you live. Then you have to study for another, let's say 3 to 4 years for a bachelor. So you have another 4 years, and then you sign up for an MBA, which is another 2-year curriculum or so. And in certain places, especially Ivy League, you may be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for this degree. And it's very likely that it's going to be outdated because professors cannot catch up with what's happening. They can't create the school books. You don't have the textbooks yet. They aren't approved, and you're going through a curriculum that takes another 4 years and so forth. It's so complicated that it normally takes anywhere from 4 to 10 years for something that's happening in the real world to turn into a book, to get accepted, and then students actually going through that curriculum. So the reason the book is called MBA Disrupted is you don't have to go through that cycle, and many people are just not lucky enough to be accepted and get a stipend to learn at Harvard or Stanford or MIT or some of the best colleges. And the fact that many other local universities have their MBA specialties doesn't mean that they're good enough or they're teaching the right entrepreneurship skills, business management skills, things like go-to-market, registering your LLC, and so on and so on. So it's a pretty sensitive topic. And once again, I don't diminish traditional education whatsoever, but it's far from optimal. And it's kind of a hit or miss whether you would have the chance to be accepted and be able to attend several years at one of the top profile universities giving these great opportunities.
Definitely a lot of food for discussion. I have my fair share of problems with traditional education, having 2 kids and learning stuff with them where I know exactly this is completely useless. I always believe they should. I don't want to kick off a discussion here, but it's really, I think they should try to build a good human being. and then let them out of into the world, rather than trying to or pretending they know what they're going to need to know. It would be my favorite version of education, because they're never going to be where things are. It's just never going to happen. I talked to my father, who was a teacher for 40 years, and he said, yeah, 40 years ago, we had this problem that education was 20 years behind. So it's just and things were moving really slowly compared to how we move today. So I would just ask educators to give up on that idea that they need to be close to what's happening in the world, and just, okay, what are the things that don't change? What are those from emotional intelligence to communication skills, to leadership skills, to team building skills, to whatever, and just make a good human that can then go to specifically do an internship in the company where they learn the stuff they're actually going to use. But that's definitely another discussion, but I think we're pretty aligned on that one.
It's a separate 1 hour webinar on education that we can turn out on LinkedIn or something.
1 hour, 1 month.
An entire MBA program on education.
Absolutely. I want to go back to your book, because you talk about a topic that's the client acquisition, right? Specifically client acquisition. I've been running agencies for 20 years from freelance. I called myself an agency back then, which was really funny. And I had people come to my office and look left and right, and there was nobody else. And I called myself an agency. We are now 25 people, or sometimes more. So I think we are an agency now. I have yet to meet an agency that's not struggling with client acquisition, because it seems like such a tidal movement. You get like crazy busy in a few months, and then it's radio silence, and then you're crazy busy again. Everybody trying to keep their team, maintain the team, grow the team when possible, but then clients drop off again. It's like really crazy. So client acquisition is obviously one of the hot topics, and everybody I talk about says, how are you doing it? How are you doing it? And then you compile like one strategy here and there with a few bits and pieces. You have a very good overview about the latest tools, latest trends, inbound, outbound. What do you think is a good client acquisition model for a service business these days?
Yeah, totally. Whatever we record today, if the episode gets released in a month from now, it's already going to be outdated. Mm-hmm. So it's important to understand kind of one of the things that Elon Musk talks about is first principles, right? Once we understand the first principles, it's easy to devise strategies down from the first principles, right? So what I'm going to say is going to be somewhat theoretical, somewhat practical, and I'm going to try to make it as helpful as possible. But I can share several things. First, in the book itself, I'm covering the client acquisition topic in multiple spaces. First, I'm covering 12 different types of digital businesses. One of them, of course, is agencies. We also have software as a service, newsletters, affiliate businesses, e-commerce, and stuff. One of the things that, and I've also gotten as positive feedback for the book, is that people who are in the agency space actually drive ideas from acquisition strategies through affiliate marketing, communities, drop shipping, and so forth. So sometimes taking a look at the horizontal other business models may spark great ideas of how you can actually grow your business by not going through a traditional book. This is kind of one of the things that I'd like to mention. One other topic that I'm covering is there's an entire chapter on go-to-market strategies, and we are covering the main ones. Again, inbound marketing, inbound-led strategies, outbound partnerships, events, founder-led motion, community-led motion, enterprise motion. They're kind of the core pillars that people can actually focus on. And in different stages of time, different motions are more relevant than others. Over the past 2 to 3 years, when money was no object, VC funds were pouring tens of billions of dollars in different businesses, it was easy to spend money on paid ads. But it was also the most competitive line of business. Right now, it's not easy and it's more expensive to spend money on paid ads, but it's also less competitive. So what we actually see right now is that paid ads perform better because B2B SaaS businesses that used to have billions in funding are no longer running as many paid ads, right? But what I can also say is, again, when it comes to first principles, first, on the agency front, on our end at Devrix, the 4 core channels that work really well for us is, first off, it's inbound. So it's SEO and thought leadership and all the other stuff, podcasts like this one as well. So this is the first one. Second one is my own personal brand, which is, again, my blog, my books, my podcast, my kind of all the other resources. It's partnerships. several strategic companies that we partner up and build projects with together, hosting companies, advertising management companies, creative branding and stuff, and referrals from existing business, which also means account managers who left their jobs, start a new job, and also call us to join another project. So I'm kind of sharing what works for us. And again, people can just kind of copy over and replicate it. And the last piece of advice that I would say is, again, look for opportunities, look for blue ocean. Right now, with AI on the rise over the past year and a half, AI is producing tons of paid ads, tons of cold outreach, cold emails, cold calls, robocalls, and all that. So it's a pretty dense, pretty impersonal channel. Also, people are now fed up with both assistants and bots and tools and AI just reaching out impersonally to them. So looking for all opportunities to have personal and direct and individual conversation is best, meaning that events are on the rise. B2B business influencers are also on the rise because businesses already trust them. Communities are on the rise, Slack groups, masterminds, coaching groups, and all that stuff. So any opportunity to go to a smaller space and present yourself as an actual human being beats all the bot outreach, which has been overwhelming over the past few years.
I think it's so funny. I talked about this a while ago, like focusing on everything that doesn't scale, because we are such in such a scale craze. You can't spend your time on something that's not scaling, etc. But what actually happens when you do is suddenly you get feedback from a client and say, "Hey, I really appreciate this video sent me." Right? We spend so much time with our Loom videos that we send out and how we prepare this for every single client, or even somebody trying to work with us. We send them some additional insights or something like this, and they really appreciate this. They really appreciate those individual emails they get. And definitely I can see events definitely coming back, and it's just a completely different level once you have been at an event and met somebody in person. Even if you never talk again, you're still always going to refer back to this physical touch point, and you know exactly where you met this person the first time. You definitely don't have this with a massive outreach. And let's be honest, the amount of outbound marketing that happens right now is just crazy. And then you talk to some email appointment setters or something like this, and they tell you how many hundreds or thousands of people they actually have to bother in order to get one appointment. And just because it's free, let's do 100,000, and something is going to come up. It seems like something that's not sustainable.
As part of that learning process, I spend a lot of time studying, the macro environment, the global sociology, macroeconomy, and just the general state of digital. And again, this helps me derive ideas from first principles. And when it comes to outbound, first, I keep track of several business development leaders and thought influencers and all that. And all of them report that demand outreach is down with about 50% in terms of efficiency. That's kind of one thing. So it takes twice as many calls to get someone on the phone and then, have the opportunity to convert them. So it's telling that people are fed up with cold calls. They don't pick up their phones when they see an unknown number. Android and iOS are also taking care of flagging many of these as spam. So this channel is getting oversaturated. In terms of PPC, the lack of efficiency, PPC is also staggering. Metadata and some of the other sources, 6sense as well, have reported that customer acquisition cost in some campaigns measured by them is as high as $44,000. So certain businesses have been spending in 2023 $44,000 to acquire a customer. And again, this can tell you how hard it is to actually run a successful campaign. And many of the campaigns that we've seen have not been successful. And this is the reason why they're scaling down right now, because companies are not raising another round of funding at these crazy valuations that we've seen in 2021 and 2022. And last, when you said about things that are not scaling, I'm seeing more and more CEOs getting back on the battlefield and getting back on LinkedIn, in Slack community, speaking themselves, talking to customers themselves, selling themselves, presenting themselves, even if they've spent the past 3 years just sitting on a beach or, on boards and not being active. Because now they understand that all the playbooks are no longer working and they have to be on the line. So all these asymmetric opportunities are paying off big time right now.
I think it's a really good movement. It's going to double down a little bit on what makes the humans really superior over AI, at least for the time being. Let's put it that way. But yeah, definitely we had this as well. I remember years ago there was this email marketing courses Autoresponder Madness. I did this years ago, and it was really interesting how much. I forgot this guy's name. Such a great work. It's going to come to me. What he really focused on one of the models, which was actually like really only talking to the people you should be talking to, like not massively reaching out, not massively sending email newsletters to 10,000 people. If you could send it to 5 who actually care. And he was like a super affiliate and got like major results just from a really small list, just because he was first filtering who's interested and then really making sure he brings those sales home. And I think this is a really, really interesting approach where it's okay, you could be reaching out to this list of 2,000 people, but you could also kind of filter who might actually be open right now for this particular topic, and then send them a couple more emails to actually try to get them to participate in something, right?
It pays off when you speak to the right people and you spend the right amount of time and effort and attention there. I'm discussing account-based marketing in the book, and in terms of reaching out the right people, I also have a half a chapter on defining your ICP, your ideal client profile, your buyer persona, your offer, lots of other things that are important in that case. But it definitely pays off, even though it's not a scalable effort. As you said, you need to double down on the right people. Even if it's 50 target clients, spend 4 months just nurturing them, and you can actually close 10 of them. And they're your perfect audience, instead of sending tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of emails to unknown people that are not personalized and don't make good impression.
Yeah, definitely. Also our experience, we don't do much outbound marketing, mostly get inbound and referrals, obviously. But whatever we do outbound, we spend a lot of time just filtering who should we actually be talking to. Do they have this problem we want to fix for them? And then we start the outbound, because otherwise it's just going crazy. I think one thing that you talk a lot about on several occasions in your book also is pretty, I would sum it up as playing the long game, having this long-term focus, this vision, this strategy, etc. We hear this a lot, right? Everybody says, yeah, play the long term. What does this mean in practical terms for you?
The overnight success has been overplayed too much. And this is the reason why most startups are in such a dark shape right now. What we see, again, media is the fourth power, right? So we have the educational one, the law and order, and the police forces are kind of the core three ones, but media is the fourth power, and it's there for a reason. So the way that media works right now, it's trying to capture attention. And again, the way media has always worked, be it radio or TV, competing for attention. Which radio station are you going to listen to? Which TV station? Right now, it's all the websites out there, all the websites competing for attention. So for that reason, websites are creating viral clickbaity articles. And what's most viral is covering successful entrepreneurs. Some of the best clicked articles are by our own Jeff Bezos, Mark Cuban, Mark Zuckerberg, the other guys, or startups that raise a ton of money. But in reality, 1 out of 10,000 startups becomes a unicorn or even more. And all the other startups and all the other failing stories are actually not getting covered. And again, the reason is that most people spend a lot of time watching Instagram and TikTok and reading all this. I'm driving my Lambo with my dropshipping website. So you take a $99 course and you're going to drive a Lambo in 2 months. This fake perception is selling snake's oil. And it's really easy to fall into that trap, similar to gambling. So the reality is that the more time you put into one thing, the more your competition is going to weed out, right? People are going to give up month 2, month 5, year 1, year 2, year 3, but then they remain the same. There are different startup studies that say that about 90% of the startups go bankrupt over the first 5 years. So it automatically means that if you survive 5 years, you're going to beat the odds, and it gets really, really, really hard to fail afterwards. But once again, most people are just going to give up in the first few months, tops 2 years, and that's kind of the biggest problem here. So patience and perseverance are so much more important, and following the right strategies, making sure that you're doing the right thing, is the best way to make sure that you survive in the future.
It reminds me of this. I think it was Alex Hormozi saying, if you do something 1,000 times, there's just no other way than getting better at it. Very often you might give up after the 50. Okay, I've done this now 50 times. I've sent 50 newsletters. Nobody bought. How I just give it up. And it seems like if you do webinars, it's much better and much easier.
Alex has several of these stories. So if you don't follow him, again, Alex Hormozi, look him up. He's pretty much everywhere. But first off, he's discussing kind of effort and perseverance and says, I'm spending 200 hours on my 1 hour presentation. How many people are spending 200 hours on 1 hour presentation? Almost nobody. Everyone's spending 3, 4, 5, 8 hours, 10 hours probably, but he's doing 20x the amount of work for that. Same goes for the book, spending thousands of hours on $100 million leads and $100 million offers. Same goes for other efforts. So playing the long game means really putting the work and putting the volume out there. There is another stat that, again, I believe 99% of all podcasts don't have more than 21 episodes. I may be misquoting, but I think this was the case. So whenever you record more than 21 episodes, you're automatically in the top 1% podcast in the world. So this is just telling about how many people start and give up in the first few months.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I try to do this with clients as well, to frame expectations right from the start. Because some people say, I had clients literally coming to me and say, look, this is our last shot. Otherwise, we're going to close the business. When we were doing lead generation in the gym space, I had a gym owner call me up and say, Gerd, if this doesn't work, we have to close the gym. No pressure.
No pressure.
And I was like, I'm going to turn your business around with one Facebook ad back then. But also we have seen, okay, people understand initially that SEO is a 6 to 12 months thing minimum. Yeah. But after 4 months, they get nervous.
Yeah.
And then I can show them all the case study we have where after 6, 8 months, things really kick in, but you need to stay with it and need to keep going. But still, obviously, it's an investment, and every investment you want to see something coming back. Everybody admires Warren Buffett, but nobody would have half the stamina it takes to actually push through with this strategy. But really, this playing the long game, I had to learn this myself really the hard way, because I lost so much money with those quick fire campaigns and things. And I'm just, you think you can force it, and you can just, no, I'm just going to, this is a really good ad. This is a really good landing page. This is a really good offer. This is an amazing price, but you just can't force a lot of things. And I see this now. We have been with this brand SEO Leverager around now for 4.5 years. Before it was a different brand. And now you suddenly get people who say, hey, I've been following you for a few years. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. And I say, hey, yeah, for 3 years, I'm listening to your podcast and I'm receiving your emails. You should be finding me on your email address. I've read every single email. This guy never said anything. We have, like you say, CMOs we worked with in 3 years ago, 4 years ago on a different company. They're now with a different business, and consultant the other day called me up. So remember me, I was leading the marketing division back then. I'm now a partner in a pretty different business. We want to do SEO with you. And this can't happen after a year, and it can't happen after 6 months, and it can't happen when you open up your agency and 2 months later you're worried because you don't have any clients. It's just so much that needs to happen in order to build up this trust, authority, but also give people enough time to actually make the decision and come to a conclusion. It just doesn't work that fast.
People underappreciate brand affinity, and that's a core problem that many are facing. Probably 20 years ago, I read a study by IBM and Microsoft. It's kind of a combined one, but there was the rule of 7, right? You need at least 7 touch points with a customer, with a prospect, before they consider your customer. This study was 20 years old. It was far before TikTok and Instagram and paid ads and all that. And the recent studies, especially in B2B, showcase that it's over 30 or even 40 touch points with a single client, with a single prospect before they turn into a client. So you can't just prep a landing page, run some traffic, and expect that high ticket deals are going to close. It takes 40 plus touch points before people are convinced that, okay, I see this brand everywhere, it's top of mind, or I know they're reliant, they're not disappearing, they're not an overnight success, or they're not snakes, or I don't see bad reviews and all that jazz, which simply takes a lot of time. So investing in brand affinity is extremely important. And whatever type of campaign you do, you need people to see you consistently over a certain period of time before they see a deal. Sixth Sense measured that the average high ticket B2B deal in Q1 took about 12 months, and buyers are doing their own research for about 8 months before shortlisting the top 3 vendors and reaching out for them for a quote. So it takes 8 months of due diligence and research and referrals, asking people, browsing, Trustpilot, G2 Crowd, Quatch, whatever it is, compiling and consolidating and reading data and seeing tweets and posts and all that jazz. And then they say, okay, these 3 companies, they seem reasonable. I've seen them a few times. They look legit. I don't see any specific red flags, so I'm going to get quotes from them. So yes, when it comes to playing the long game, that's how it actually works. And if people actually ask themselves what their purchasing habits are, it works the same way, right? You don't buy a random cold beverage or a random soda pop off the store that you've never seen. You go and buy a Coca-Cola or Fanta or whatever it is, Mountain Dew, something that you've seen ever since you was a kid. If it's a new one, you need at least 10 people to tell you that it's good, and maybe you give it a shot at an event and just try it out before you become a fan, but they need a few years to pick up. Otherwise, it's just not working out.
I think this is such a brilliant point. People just completely ignore their own behavior when they talk about expectations. I talk about this with a lot of clients as well, where I say, now look at your article. Imagine now you are this person that comes to this article, you typed in this search phrase, and you see this lead magnet, would you click on it? And I said, no. And I'm like, yeah, but you're telling me you're not getting enough leads, right? So it's just really this outside look. We obviously don't have it. And this is where consultants, coaches like yourself in a very similar role very often, I think are really showing the value, where to say, I've got an outsider. It's so clear as an outsider. You look at this and say, this can't happen. It's clear why this is not working, right? We work with so many podcasters that come to us and say, I've got 500 shows up. Nothing is happening. Best-selling authors with multiple books online and say, no, people come to my website, but nobody does anything. You look at the website, this is impossible. You're pretty much having blinds down. And then you just shut down your store pretty much, because it's just, you make it so hard. You have crazy high expectations. And if you look at it through a client's eyes, you wouldn't buy from yourself. So this outside perspective, I think, is really, really interesting.
It's definitely important. And when I sent the book for review early on, I had several pieces of feedback that there's a specific chapter at the beginning of the book, which is called market research. So I'm discussing qualitative and quantitative research, primary and secondary, and some other things. And it's outright boring, right? It's hard to go through that, and you've probably skimmed through it as well, because it's more scientific and it's not a pleasant one to read. It's not exciting. It's not building new stuff, launching campaigns and running landing pages and stuff. It's very boring, but it's there for a reason, because you can spend 2 years trying to build something that doesn't have product market fit because you haven't done your due diligence. And especially when we work with enterprises, this is the very first thing that smart enterprises do. They go out and they solicit feedback from their prospects. They run a prospect list. They set up interviews. They visit. They offer Amazon cards and all that. And when I'm working with VC funds, the best startups, the ones that turn to unicorns, that's what they do. It's pretty much door-to-door salesmanship. They try to sell. They can't sell, but they solicit for feedback. Okay, what don't you like about the offer? Is the pricing wrong? Is it the packaging? Is it the branding? What's the problem you're trying to solve? How can we make it any better? Eric Ries, one of the author of The Lean Startup, one of the best books that I've read myself, has also piloted the MVP, the minimum viable product concept. And he said the same thing, right? You start as an MVP because you want to launch a prototype in several weeks and go and start testing it and gathering feedback. Instead of building your project that's in your head, that's actually impractical and nobody needs it, spend 2 years building it and millions of dollars, and then it turns out that you need to shut down the business. So that gathering feedback phase and speaking to the right people to actually capture the right problems is what most people are forgetting about. And that's what makes most products, that's what turns most startups into a failure, because it's a product that nobody has a desperate need for, that isn't priced accurately, isn't explained accurately, isn't packaged accurately, and they actually turn up wasting their time, which is definitely food for thought.
So it's so funny when you see, especially new entrepreneurs, spend their time on a lot of things that don't matter and won't matter in the first 10 years. obviously the typical example is logo and business cards. When I was younger, it was business cards. Right now, probably it's the logo first and foremost, and the social media strategy. But it's so funny. I was in a SaaS mastermind for a few months, and one thing I took away from it, which I really resonated with me back then, and still does, is whatever you put out yourself is going to be crap until you get feedback from the person that's supposed to pay for it. And this was this pretty much summed up a lot of my experiences prior to that. And if I look at the SEO Leverage platform we built with our developer over the years and see what it looks like now versus what I thought was actually a good idea 4 years ago, it has nothing to do with it, because all the features were requested by our clients. I say, always asking for feedback. They're happy to share it. They say, look, it would be good to have a spreadsheet export here. It would be good to connect to our product management system. It would be great if this app could actually show this in different colors. It would be really nice if we could bring this value in, this KPI in, because it would be helpful. It would really be cool if we could have multiple websites on our one account. So we built so many features and really kept our developer probably busy for 3 years just developing features our clients wanted. And they're using now on a daily basis, and they just represent a group that we usually really get really good results for. So whoever joins this group now gets all the features that his peers essentially, or their peers essentially, requested over time. So whatever you put out before someone doesn't tell you what they think about it, that's actually in your target group, not your family, your mother, your cousin. Yeah. I think is just accept it's not going to be good, and that's it.
It definitely isn't, and you definitely don't understand what your customers actually need and what's the biggest pain point unless you do a pretty comprehensive research. And you're solving your own problem is important, and that's one of the best ways to do a business. But your opinion is not statistically significant. And running that research, a combination of qualitative, which is actually diving into specific pain points with 10 to 15 people, and quantitative, running larger surveys and looking into statistical data, both are equally important. And speaking for SaaS in particular and building a roadmap, it's funny because most people don't understand that when enterprise companies sign up for software, they have two target audiences of software as a service. First one is traditional enterprise software, such as Salesforce, Marketo, HubSpot, and like the names that we know, SAP and stuff. But the second group is SaaS companies that have been around for 2 to 3 to 4 years with teams of 15, 20, 30, 40 people. Ones that enterprises can work with directly and make sure that they influence their opinions and they can, control their roadmap. Because if you're an enterprise and you go to Salesforce and you tell them, hey, I actually need this, it's pretty integral for my business, Salesforce is going to say, well, all of Louis Vuitton's brands are hosted on Salesforce Cloud Commerce. So unless you are one of the top 3 richest people in the world, we probably are not going to make custom stuff for you. But when you go to that SaaS that's fighting for the enterprise, the CIO or the CMO or VP of marketing, whomever is championing for this product, they know they can speak to the founder. They know they can work out. They're going to prioritize it and stuff, which makes them a pretty interesting target because the product can mold up and kind of go adapt to their needs at the cost of a monthly or annual subscription versus hiring an entire IT department to build one specific custom product. So this is often neglected and underappreciated, and the best way to solve that is actually doing that research with your ICPs and talking to these people in enterprises who have a need that you can fulfill with your own product. So again, it's the catch-22 type of thing.
And it also goes back to those things that don't scale, right? So it doesn't scale as well if you make some custom adaptations, but it might keep this customer around forever. And it might actually be well worth the effort to collecting some ideas and having an upvote, downvote system or something like this, and see what the customer base actually wants or needs or requests here.
On the agency side, we have several businesses that I think 6 or 7 that already made us over $1 million each. Mm-hmm. So we have 7-figure clients on the agency front. And, for a team of 40, 50 people or so, it's a pretty significant amount for a single client. So I'm never, I know from experience how important a single one specific individual could be, how powerful they could be, and how much value they can bring to the business if you just spend enough time educating, consulting, helping out, even doing a favor or so. And again, for most people who are trying not to do that grueling work, again, attending events and speaking directly to people and stuff, yes, it is a hit or miss. Yes, there's no guarantee or so. But when you're consistently helpful and working on providing great content, educational resources, webinars, speaking at conferences and stuff, sometimes one single client can be your blue whale and actually turn your business around. So as someone who believes in good karma and bad karma as well, I'm always living by these principles too.
Absolutely. We've seen this so many times. I think my longest standing client has been with me like for 14 years now, 15 years, something like that. Like renewing monthly, month after month. We just keep going until he says stop, and we pretty much increased services. Just talked to him yesterday and we found a different solution. We're going to do some additional stuff for him. It's just really, really nice. It's a friendship that develops over time, obviously. We go for lunch regularly. This is still a client here locally from Spain, with my first client actually in Spain. But we have a few of those, and the other ones might be, I think, 5 years, 8 years, something like this. And it's just something that you can't really, I mean, people talk about customer lifetime value for 2 years. If somebody leaves after 2 years and doesn't like our service, we actually do a research why this happened, because I think we did something wrong and didn't communicate well the expectations, or something was wrong in the process. Because if something is working and getting enough, you get enough value, you get the results, should really not be a reason to sign off from a service that's just part of what you should be doing anyway. But I see just so many companies having this focus of like 4 or 6 months. I talked to a client the other day, to an agency the other day, working mostly with outbound and cold calling, etc. And they say 6 months. 6 months is a nightmare. If I have a client stay around for 6 months, we haven't even learned their industry by then. It just takes so many months and so many conversations to have a really good understanding about the industry. And they just switch and start from scratch after 6 months. And it's just a nightmare. Yeah, just a nightmare.
Some of our longer standing businesses, we don't have 14 years. We have several that are 8 or 9 years. And over the course of our business relationship together, we have probably changed 4, 5, 6 product managers in charge of the project on their end. And most of their staff that have been around when we started working with them is no longer with them. So what I definitely want to tell all the agencies listening to your podcast is, first off, I've been pretty bullish on retainers. We actually coined the term WordPress retainers as a WordPress agency. And this is the core business model that we are living on, because we can always mold the services and add on top of that. And it's not a very niche specific one core thing that you do and you get detached. We are in our case, technical MarTech partnership for the business. And for many of our long-lasting clients, we are actually keeping the institutional knowledge of their business. Most of them, they don't know where they're hosted, how many redesigns were there over the past 8 years, what was built, or they say, hey, we need this feature, but we don't know if we can afford it and stuff. And it's like, well, actually, you also wanted it 5 years ago. Then you decided to sunset it. So we can actually revive it for 2 hours instead of spending 300 hours building it.
Yeah.
And that institutional knowledge, retaining that is so much powerful that it's actually a selling point for certain businesses that work with agencies.
No, it makes a lot of sense. We definitely had this situation as well. I had even as a freelancer, I survived, I think, 4 different CEOs in a company. And I think the last one came from Austria. He took a plane, came to Madrid, visit me to see how this was actually possible. He wanted to meet me in person and asked me how this was possible, that I was never exchanged for a bigger agency. I was actually a solo developer back then. And he came to Madrid. We had lunch. He said, okay, now I get it. You continue to do this. And he got back. It's really funny. It obviously takes this chemistry as well. When you get to know somebody, you start working with this agency, you get a feeling, do they actually care? Do they try to understand my business? Do they value my input? Because very often I see agencies just doing their thing rather than interviewing the client and actually extracting all the knowledge they have been building up. We have clients who have been doing their thing for 20 years. You can't just wipe it away and say, okay, now we know SEO and we don't need you. We absolutely need our clients. I think now more than ever with AI content generation and the space we live in and the different platforms that are involved right now. But it's really interesting how this can be leveraged. I want to really be careful of not taking too much of your time. I really appreciate how you're sharing your experience. I would love to have you back in the future at some point and talk a little bit more about all kinds of things, business and education potentially. How can people reach out to you if they want to learn more? Obviously, all get the book MBA Disrupted on Amazon, paperback and Kindle if possible, so you have it always with you. How else can they get in touch?
Yeah, so first off, grabbing the book, I'm actually funneling people to my own Slack community so that I can help entrepreneurs to actually stay accountable and get help in the process or get recommendations with you. So once you go and grab MBA Disrupted on Amazon, or you actually visit the website, mbadisrupted.com, which honestly looks like trash, but it's been built up in the process. Or just look me up, Mario Pescev. I'm pretty active. My blog is mariopescev.com. And I have tons of insights over there. Or look up Mario Pescev on Twitter or LinkedIn. And yeah, just mention the book as a reference. So I know it's not one of these outbound cold strategies. So mention, hey, I heard you on Gerd's podcast or read the book, and I'm going to be, okay, you're verified and legit. Otherwise, I'm probably going to click ignore. So there's that.
Yeah, it might be somebody reaching out. Hey, I've seen we have a lot of contacts in common.
Hey, we have a $99 SEO plan that's going to make you page one of Google. It's like, yeah. Number 1073 texting me there. So
there you go. Awesome. MBA Disrupted, Mario Pescev. Thank you so much, Mario, for coming to the show.
Thanks, everyone. See you around.
Thank you. This is episode 133. Head over to seoleverage.com/podcast. Going to find all the references and the contact details for Mario and his book there. And stay tuned for more episodes about all things business, platforms, optimization. My name is Gerd Mellak. Have a good day.